You think you know the great heroes of history. Hercules, Achilles, King Arthur, these are the names everyone remembers. But history is filled with legendary figures whose stories were deliberately forgotten, suppressed, or overshadowed. Today we're diving into the heroes history erased, warriors who changed civilizations, revolutionaries who challenged empires, leaders who defied the odds, all forgotten because their stories threatened power, contradicted narratives, or simply got lost in time. From ancient warriors to medieval revolutionaries to indigenous heroes, this is the hidden history of legendary figures who deserve to be remembered. Let's start with Zenobia, the warrior queen who nearly destroyed the Roman Empire. In the 3rd century AD, Zenobia ruled Palmyra, a wealthy city in modern-day Syria. When her husband was assassinated, Zenobia didn't retreat, she conquered. She built an army, invaded Roman territories, and created an empire stretching from Turkey to Egypt. She declared independence from Rome, minted her own coins with her face on them, and ruled as Augusta, a title reserved for Roman emperors. Emperor Aurelian had to personally lead legions to stop her. Even then, it took years of warfare. Zenobia was a brilliant military strategist, a skilled diplomat, and a patron of philosophy and arts. She spoke multiple languages, studied with famous scholars, and created a multicultural empire. But when Rome finally defeated her, they tried to erase her from history. Roman propaganda portrayed her as a treacherous barbarian, a seductress, a puppet of advisors. The truth is Zenobia terrified Rome because she proved a woman could rule an empire, command armies, and challenge Roman supremacy. She's almost unknown today because acknowledging her threatens the narrative of Roman invincibility and male-dominated history. Zenobia deserves to be remembered alongside Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. Then we have Spartacus, but not the version Hollywood shows. History remembers Spartacus as a gladiator who led a slave rebellion, and that's true. But what's forgotten is the scale and significance of what he accomplished. Spartacus wasn't just fighting for freedom, he was building an alternative society. His army of escaped slaves defeated multiple Roman legions, controlled large territories of Italy, and created a mobile republic where former slaves governed themselves. For 2 years, Spartacus's army humiliated the most powerful military force on earth. He trained slaves in tactics, built a supply system, established discipline, and turned desperate fugitives into a formidable army. Rome was so terrified they sent 8 legions, the largest military response to an internal threat in Roman history. Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of Rome's wealthiest and most ambitious men, had to personally lead the campaign. Even after defeating Spartacus, Rome crucified 6,000 captured rebels along the Appian Way as a warning. But here's what history forgets: Spartacus nearly won. He had opportunities to escape Italy but chose to stay and fight for total liberation. His rebellion exposed Rome's dependence on slave labor and challenged the legitimacy of the entire system. Roman historians minimized his story because it was too dangerous, a slave who nearly toppled Rome. Let's talk about Tomyris, the Scythian queen who killed Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great, founder of the Persian Empire, was considered invincible. He had conquered Babylon, Lydia, and created the largest empire the world had seen. But when he invaded the lands of the Scythians, Queen Tomyris stopped him. Cyrus initially used deception, pretending to retreat and leaving wine and supplies behind. When Tomyris' son got drunk and was captured, she sent a message: "Return my son, or I will give you your fill of blood." Cyrus refused. He killed her son. Tomyris led her army in a massive battle, defeated the Persians, killed Cyrus, and according to legend, beheaded his corpse and dipped his head in a skin filled with blood, fulfilling her promise. This is the death of one of history's greatest conquerors, killed by a woman most people have never heard of. Why? Because acknowledging Tomyris means admitting that nomadic warrior queens could defeat empires, that the civilized Persians were vulnerable, and that women led armies as equals. We should discuss Yasuke, the African samurai of feudal Japan. In 1579, an African man arrived in Japan with Italian Jesuit missionaries. His name was Yasuke, and he became the first and only known African samurai. Lord Oda Nobunaga, one of Japan's most powerful warlords, was fascinated by Yasuke. He brought him into his service, gave him a samurai sword, made him a warrior retainer, and trusted him with important duties. Yasuke fought in battles alongside Japanese samurai, served Nobunaga directly, and was present during the Honnoji incident when Nobunaga was betrayed and forced to commit seppuku. After Nobunaga's death, Yasuke fought to protect his heir but was captured. The enemy commander decided not to kill Yasuke, saying he wasn't Japanese and didn't understand their customs. Yasuke's fate after that is unknown. But here's the significance: a black African man became a samurai in 16th century Japan, served one of the most important figures in Japanese history, and fought in pivotal battles. Yet he's almost completely forgotten. Western history ignored him because he didn't fit narratives of European colonialism, and Japanese history marginalized him as a curiosity. Yasuke deserves recognition as a warrior who transcended cultures. Let's explore Boudica, the Celtic queen who burned Roman London to the ground. When Rome invaded Britain, they made deals with local Celtic tribes. The Iceni tribe's king, Spartacus, allied with Rome and even named the Roman emperor co-heir in his will. But when he died, Roman officials ignored the will, annexed the kingdom, had Boudica publicly flogged, and raped her daughters. Boudica didn't submit. She led a rebellion that united multiple Celtic tribes. Her army sacked Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, slaughtered the Roman garrison, and destroyed the city. They marched on Londinium, modern-day London, and burned it to the ground. Archaeological layers of destruction from Boudica's revolt are still visible in London today. Then they destroyed Verulamium, modern-day St. Albans. Roman historian Tacitus estimated that 70,000 Romans and Roman allies were killed in Boudica's revolt. The entire Roman occupation of Britain was nearly ended. Governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus had to return from Wales with his legions to stop her. Even then, it took a major pitched battle to defeat Boudica's forces. Rather than be captured, Boudica took poison and died. Rome tried to suppress her memory because she represented the danger of provoking conquered peoples too far. But Celtic oral tradition remembered her, and she became a symbol of resistance against empire. Boudica shows that women in ancient cultures could be military commanders, that indigenous resistance could threaten Rome, and that empire was maintained through violence. We must discuss Vercingetorix, the Gallic chieftain who united the tribes against Julius Caesar. Everyone knows Caesar conquered Gaul, but what's forgotten is how close he came to losing. Vercingetorix was a young nobleman of the Arverni tribe who united the fractured Gallic tribes under a single command for the first time. He understood Roman military tactics and used guerrilla warfare, scorched earth strategies, and mobile cavalry. At the Battle of Gergovia, Vercingetorix defeated Caesar and inflicted significant Roman casualties. This was Caesar's most humiliating military defeat. For months, Vercingetorix controlled large territories and forced Caesar into a defensive position. Only at the siege of Alesia did Caesar finally trap and defeat him. Even then, it required building massive fortifications in a circle around the Gallic forces and then building another circle facing outward to hold off reinforcements. After defeat, Vercingetorix surrendered himself to save his people from total annihilation. Caesar kept him imprisoned for 6 years, then paraded him through Rome during his triumph before executing him. Roman propaganda portrayed Gauls as barbarians, but Vercingetorix was a tactical genius who nearly ended Caesar's career. He's forgotten because acknowledging him means admitting that Rome's conquests were not inevitable, that the conquered peoples were sophisticated, and that empire was built on blood. Let's talk about Khutulun, the Mongol warrior princess who never lost a wrestling match. Khutulun was the great-great-granddaughter of Genghis Khan and daughter of Kaidu, a powerful Mongol prince. She was reportedly the finest wrestler in the empire and made a vow: any man who wanted to marry her had to defeat her in wrestling. If they lost, they had to give her horses. According to Marco Polo, who wrote about her, Khutulun won 10,000 horses through these contests. She refused all suitors because none could beat her. She fought in battles alongside her father's warriors, wearing armor and leading cavalry charges. Kaidu wanted her to be his successor, but male relatives opposed a woman ruling. Khutulun never became Khan, but she remained a legendary warrior. She challenges Western assumptions that medieval women were passive, that Mongol culture was entirely patriarchal, and that physical prowess was exclusively male. She's forgotten because she doesn't fit neat historical categories. We should explore Hannibal Barca more deeply, because everyone knows he crossed the Alps with elephants, but few know the full significance. Hannibal wasn't just a military genius, he was leading a multi-ethnic coalition against Roman imperialism. His army included Carthaginians, Numidians, Iberians, Gauls, Greeks, and Italians. He spent 15 years in Italy, winning battle after battle, and Rome couldn't defeat him. At Cannae, Hannibal destroyed a Roman army of 80,000 men, the worst military defeat in Roman history. He used a double envelopment tactic that military strategists still study. Rome lost so many soldiers that they resorted to emergency measures, even arming slaves. Hannibal operated in hostile territory for years without a functioning supply line, living off the land and constantly recruiting. Rome eventually defeated Hannibal by avoiding direct battle and attacking Carthage itself, forcing him to return home. But even then, they only defeated him through attrition and superior resources, not military skill. After Carthage lost the Second Punic War, Rome pursued Hannibal for decades until he took poison rather than be captured. Rome later completely destroyed Carthage, enslaved its population, and tried to erase Carthaginian culture from history. Why? Because Hannibal proved that Rome could be beaten, that a multicultural army could challenge empire, and that non-Romans could be militarily superior. Remembering Hannibal too well threatened Roman propaganda. Let's discuss Ching Shih, the pirate queen who commanded 80,000 sailors and terrorized the Chinese government. In the early 1800s, Ching Shih went from being a prostitute to the most powerful pirate in history. When her pirate husband died, she took command of his fleet, established a strict code of laws, organized the pirates into a confederation, and built a naval empire. Her fleet was so powerful that the Chinese government couldn't defeat her. They sent multiple naval expeditions, all failed. European colonial powers operating in Chinese waters had to negotiate with her. She controlled trade routes, collected taxes, and operated as a de facto government. Eventually, the Chinese government offered her amnesty, she negotiated favorable terms, kept her wealth, retired peacefully, and opened a gambling house. Ching Shih is the most successful pirate in history, yet she's almost unknown. Why? Because acknowledging her means admitting that a woman commanded the largest pirate fleet ever, that she was a brilliant tactician and administrator, and that she outmaneuvered the Chinese Empire. She doesn't fit the narrative of female historical roles. We must talk about Tamar the Great, Queen of Georgia who created a golden age. In the 12th century, Queen Tamar ruled the Kingdom of Georgia for 29 years. She expanded Georgian territory, defeated multiple invasions, patronized arts and architecture, and presided over Georgia's greatest cultural flourishing. Poets called her era the Georgian Renaissance. Tamar personally led military campaigns, commanded respect from male nobles and generals, navigated complex geopolitics between Byzantine, Persian, and Turkish powers, and maintained Georgian independence. She's referred to as King Tamar in historical documents, a title indicating her authority was equal to male rulers. Yet outside Georgia, almost nobody knows her name. Why is Tamar forgotten? Because Western European history doesn't include Eastern European or Caucasian history, because acknowledging powerful medieval queens complicates narratives of female historical powerlessness, and because Georgia was overshadowed by larger empires. But Tamar's reign proves that women could rule effectively in medieval times. Let's explore Jayavarman VII of the Khmer Empire, who built Angkor Thom and transformed Cambodia. After the Cham kingdom invaded and sacked Angkor, Jayavarman VII, then around 60 years old, led a military campaign to reclaim the capital. He didn't just rebuild, he transformed the empire. He constructed massive building projects, including Angkor Thom, the Bayon Temple with its famous stone faces, and a network of hospitals and rest houses. Jayavarman VII converted the empire to Buddhism and built institutions reflecting Buddhist compassion. He's one of history's greatest builder kings, yet outside Southeast Asian studies, he's barely known. Why? Because Western history focuses on European, Middle Eastern, and East Asian civilizations. The Khmer Empire's sophistication, the scale of Angkor, and Jayavarman VII's accomplishments don't fit narratives of Asian history being primarily Chinese, Indian, or Japanese. We should discuss Olga of Kiev, the medieval ruler who sought brutal revenge and then became a saint. When her husband, Prince Igor of Kiev, was killed by the Drevlians in 945 AD, they sent matchmakers proposing that Olga marry their prince. Olga invited them into her palace, had them carried in boats, then buried alive. She invited more Drevlians to a funeral feast, got them drunk, and had her soldiers massacre them. She then besieged their capital, and when they asked for mercy, she demanded 3 sparrows and 3 pigeons from each house as tribute. They complied, thinking it was lenient. Olga tied burning cloth to the birds and released them. They flew back to their nests, setting the entire city on fire. The Drevlians' capital was destroyed. After securing her power through absolute ruthlessness, Olga later converted to Christianity, reformed Kievan Russ's administrative system, and promoted Christian conversion. She was later canonized as Saint Olga. This story reveals the complexity of medieval women's power. They could rule, wage war, and seek vengeance. Olga is forgotten outside Eastern Europe because Western medieval history focuses on France, England, and the Holy Roman Empire. But she shows that women exercised brutal political power when they had to. Mansa Musa ruled the Mali Empire in the 14th century and was so wealthy that when he made pilgrimage to Mecca, he distributed so much gold in Egypt that he caused inflation and devalued gold for years. But Mansa Musa wasn't just rich, he transformed Mali into a center of Islamic scholarship. He built mosques, libraries, and universities in Timbuktu. He brought architects, scholars, and poets from across the Islamic world. Under his rule, Timbuktu became one of the world's great intellectual centers, with manuscripts and scholars rivaling any European university. Mansa Musa is often reduced to a curiosity, the richest man in history, but his cultural and intellectual legacy is ignored. Why? Because acknowledging Timbuktu's intellectual sophistication contradicts narratives of African history as primitive before European colonization. Mansa Musa's Mali was more literate, more scholarly, and wealthier than most European kingdoms of the same era. So why are these heroes forgotten? Power and narrative. History is written by victors, by empires, by dominant cultures. Zenobia threatened Rome, so Rome minimized her. Spartacus threatened the slave system, so his rebellion was downplayed. Tomyris, Khutulun, and Boudica challenged assumptions about women in warfare, so they're marginalized. Vercingetorix and Hannibal proved Rome could be beaten, so they're remembered as footnotes to Roman triumph. Yasuke doesn't fit neat racial categories. Ching Shih challenges assumptions about women and crime. Tamar and Olga are forgotten because Eastern European history is ignored. Jayavarman VII and Pachacuti are unknown because Western education is Eurocentric. Mansa Musa's intellectual legacy is suppressed because it challenges colonial narratives. These forgotten heroes reveal the biases in how history is taught. We remember Alexander but not Zenobia. We remember Caesar but minimize Vercingetorix. We remember European medieval kings but forget Tamar and Olga. We learn about European wealth but not Mansa Musa's Mali. We study Roman military but ignore Spartacus's rebellion. Reclaiming these heroes isn't just about fairness, it's about understanding the full complexity of human history. These figures show that women could be warriors, rulers, and conquerors. That enslaved people could challenge empires. That non-European civilizations were sophisticated and powerful. That history's outcomes were not inevitable. That the conquered peoples had agency, brilliance, and courage. Tomorrow we're diving into serpent symbolism across ancient civilizations. Why does every culture, from the Bible to Mesoamerica to Asia, feature serpents as divine beings? Is it coincidence, or is there something deeper? The mystery of the universal serpent. Thanks for watching. If this changed how you see history, hit subscribe. Comment below, which forgotten hero fascinated you most? Check out the rest of our channel for more hidden history.